the way that society deals with it. So it would be like if I was schizophrenic and saying, oh, well, I see a shadow person in the room that I'm talking to, and the entire society was like, yeah, I see him too. Yeah, I know, you're right.
Wait, do you think there was no difference? Do you think that that's actually analogous?
I think there's some difference, but I think
do
that
you think that there's a difference
decent
between
analogy.
if we were to validate a schizophrenic's delusion that would lead to more harm for that individual, whereas validating...
Why? You're validating them. You're
because
validating
it's not
their
hold on,
experience.
wait, stop. It's not just validating somebody because of any reason. It's that when you validate a schizophrenic person, they are having legitimate delusions about a shadow person in the room.
Right.
And validating that leads to negative outcomes for that individual. When you're talking about a trans person, you're talking about an internal perception of themselves, an identity, which by validating, you are bettering their well-being and their mental health. These are not only, hold on, stop. These are not only completely disanalogous, these are like polar opposites.
How you doing, man?
Doing good. How about you?
I'm good. So I just want to start off with this. Do you genuinely think that trans women and trans men are actual women and actual men?
Yes.
By what metric? Like how?
Well, a woman is someone whose internal perception of themselves aligns with what we culturally view as being more feminine. So,
Okay.
Yes, I would say they are a woman.
So you were talking about earlier, like you're not a gender abolitionist or whatever.
Mhm.
I would go with the fact that I am, and it's not because of like I think that there should just be like it's not how most people usually think of it. But like I don't think gender's a real thing, and I would agree with you that it's just a social construct that we came up with, and it's completely unnecessary. There's no reason. Like, what is the benefit of having the societal construct of gender? What is the benefit of it?
Well, I understand where you're coming from, but to say it's not real is just not true. I mean, yes, of course there exists a social construct of gender, and that informs our internal perception of ourselves.
But like, okay, so for example, there are things that we see as a society as feminine things. So like, if a little boy wants to play with fucking dolls or whatever, we see that as like something that's feminine. But should that start to make us think like, oh, well, that boy is now, because gender is just a social thing, and we ascribe certain acts to a gender, is he now more towards the other gender because he's partaking in more feminine things?
No.
I don't like so what?
Probably not. No, because I mean he can have an internal perception of himself that he is more masculine or a boy or whatever, and then also play with toys that right now are seen as being more feminine toys.
Well, but the definition that you read earlier from like the DSM-5 or whatever was like, oh well, they participate in activities that are generally participated in by the opposite gender.
They might take like a significant interest in those activities, sure, but just playing with toys or dolls or whatever is not. It doesn't qualify. Like what it said is just feminine behavior in boys or tomboyishness in girls that's not gender identity disorder. That's not gender dysphoria.
So I would wonder what that definition would mean, though. So what would qualify as an activity that a boy could engage in that would make someone question if they're actually identify as a female?
Well, it probably wouldn't just be like one activity. It would probably be a consistent desire to participate in these kinds of activities. And it would also probably be marked with some kind of an incongruence or discomfort with the gender that you have.
The problem with that, I have a problem with putting labels onto things. So like if a boy wants to do a bunch of feminine shit, I have no problem with that. You can do that if that's what you want to do. But I don't think that we should come up with a whole different classification of things like gender, to put them into a box.
But gender has always existed.
I don't think gender has always existed. It was a concept that
collection
came up.
of social. Wait, hold on. A collection of expectations and behaviors has always existed. Okay. Yes.
I guess that's true. But I mean, I don't think the classification of like non-binary or man and woman, like I don't think that like that the gender the way that it is seen now has always existed. I don't think at all that that's true.
Well, yeah,
I think
it's
that it's
changed because it's socially constructed, but there have always been external socially constructed views of gender.
so
You
I think
are a
it's
man,
unnecessary though.
therefore you should act this way. You are a man, therefore you should behave this way. You should look this way. You're a woman. Your place, your role is in the kitchen or with the children. Yeah, I mean that's existed throughout history.
I would agree with that. But I mean, the way that we use gender now, I think, is completely unnecessary. So, like, if like a man wants to act a certain way, then he can act that way, or if a woman wants to act a certain way, then she can act that way. But she's still a man, and or he's still a man, and she's still a woman.
Right.
I think that's the most easy way to like
Because
deal
their
with it,
internal
rather than come up
perception
with.
is still consistent.
Well, but even if so, I think that gender just confuses, especially children, because there's no like when yes, there are expectations that people have to fall into in society. But I think that when we tell people, oh well, you can be non-binary, you could be trans, you could be all these different things, you're confusing a kid because that doesn't make any sense to them. They're a child. Like
Well, you're
none of this
usually
shit
not
makes any
telling
sense to them.
kids that like you can be trans. It would usually be the other way around, as a child would start exhibiting signs of gender dysphoria, which would then cause further investigation,
I mean,
treatment.
but the thing is, like with trans, for example, um, their suicide rate is absurdly high. It's like 41% or something like that,
Hmm.
from what I saw, 41%. What is your explanation for that number being so high,
Primarily,
especially in youth?
primarily discrimination and oppression.
I would totally disagree with you because,
Well, then why
I
does it
mean,
go down when they're accepted by parents?
well, I mean, people being supportive of you is always going to make you, feel better. I mean, no matter what I mean, being in a supportive environment with anything,
Hmm.
I think is going to lower the suicide rate of any person, no matter what. I mean,
It's
but
not just being accepted; it's also being recognized as valid. Being you are the gender that you say you are.
but so 41%. So there's a lot of groups of people that are, say, like harshly bullied, like people that are harshly bullied. Their suicide rate is nowhere near the number of. There's no group that has ever existed
Whom?
ever that has ever had the suicide rate of the trans community.
I'm
There's
sorry. Wait,
never been
whom?
any community ever.
Which group did you say? I missed that.
Like if people that get harshly bullied at school, for example.
Yeah, actually, if you're bullied at school regularly, you do tend to have more suicidal tendencies.
Oh, for sure. I don't disagree with that, but it's nowhere near the number of like 41% of people that are in that group that feel, or that commit suicide.
Yeah, but you're dealing with a unique circumstance here. You're dealing with a combination of mental illness, such as gender dysphoria, which is already putting you in a place of distress, depression, and higher likely or suicidal ideation.
Okay, so you
And then
don't
on
think
top
that.
of that, you also have much higher rates of discrimination, a societal push against you. Trans people are more likely to get kicked out of their homes or be victims of violence. Yeah, so that there's like kind of a mix there.
But so you don't think that when we tell children, say a boy that's doing a lot of feminine things, you don't think that by telling them, hey, oh wait, you might be a woman, or you might be non-binary, you might be this, or you might be that, instead of just allowing them to,
Who's
you
doing
know,
that?
well, there are a lot of parents that are doing that. Like
I
if
mean, I
their
don't
if their
know
child,
where.
if,
I've seen
like
the opposite. I've seen plenty of parents that say, "I had no idea what trans was. I didn't think anything of it." And then all of a sudden my kid came to me and started expressing this.
right, but kids don't have any idea what the fuck they're talking about.
Well, I don't think that's necessarily true. Do you think that
I know
kids can
I know
suffer
for a
from
fact.
depression? Do you think that kids can suffer from ADHD?
Well, with I think ADHD is more something that I think ADHD is a totally I don't think it's a disorder. I think it's just the society that we have built doesn't align with that kind of brain. But say if we were alive 10,000 years ago or something, having ADHD would be an advantage. No, it's not an advantage when you have to sit in a classroom for 7 hours, or you have to sit down and
I don't
and
know.
and
There's a lot of
focus
people
on.
who aren't sitting in classrooms but still have a really tough time getting started on tasks or procrastinating or lacking
Well, but that
motivation.
I think that's much more about you don't want to participate in those things. It's not like if there's something that you really care about, or with at least the people with ADHD that I've talked to, if there's something that they really care about and want to do, then they can put a ton of effort in and
Well,
a ton of.
why don't we back away from this, because ADHD
Okay.
is in fact a real disorder. I mean, you can read about it in the way that I think it's the frontal lobe doesn't function properly, and there's a lack of dopamine in the brain and whatnot. But I mean,
I'm
do you
not
think
super
that
educated
kids
on
can?
it.
I mean, the thing is like, you haven't really expressed your opinion with this thing on and showing gay people or trans people in media, but a lot of people seem to be kind of contradictory here, where they say like, oh, if you show gay people or trans people, you're going to indoctrinate kids, but then you'll simultaneously say, yeah, but kids aren't smart enough to know their gender. So it's like, are they smart enough to recognize what's being shown on TV and then internalize that, or are they not smart enough to
So
know their gender?
I think that I think it's a process. So like I don't think if say, like the Peppa Pig thing, if you show a lesbian couple on Peppa Pig, a little girl watching isn't just gonna immediately be lesbian. But if you constantly shove it down their throat for their childhood, yes, it's going to change I think that you absolutely can be convinced of things that maybe wouldn't have otherwise happened. I mean,
I don't think you can be convinced of being gay.
I completely disagree. I mean,
Well,
the
then why
amount
does
of
conversion
people.
therapy not work?
I mean, but my point is that I think that's really the only explanation as to why there are so many more people in the LGBTQ community now than there ever has been. Yes, that it wasn't accepted in the past and whatever. That's totally going to make up for some of them, but for the ridiculously drastic spike that we've had in especially trans people ever since it started to be talked about all the time, I don't think that can be put down to, oh well, they've always existed, and they just were in the closet, I guess.
Well, I mean, they have always existed, though. There's documentation of trans people.
Trans people have always existed?
Yes, there's documentation of trans people existing in virtually every society to a degree. Yeah.
First of all, I would be willing to bet it was far, far less than what we currently have. And second of all, I mean, what is there, like one example from a society? Like, how many examples are there from these societies?
I mean, I don't know. I could look some up for you. I know there's examples of non-binary people back in the 1800s. You can read about trans people dating back even further than that. If you just want to look up like trans people throughout history, I'm sure you can get like a list. I can look it up for you if you'd like.
So, I mean, non-binary people in the 1800s. 1800s is not that long ago, in my opinion. I'm
Yeah, but wait, there was no like acceptance or shoving it down anyone's throat.
Right.
Then,
So
right?
I can totally understand how there could be one, non-binary person back then, but it was not a widespread thing that people even thought about. It's the same thing as like, people in Africa. There's
Wait,
no
but hold on,
trans
wait.
people or non-binary people in
Stop.
Africa.
This is the
They
same
much.
dumb argument I hear every time, okay?
What?
Back in the
What?
1800s, do you think depression was as prevalent then? Do you think anxiety was as
No.
prevalent then?
No.
Do you think
No.
people still had anxiety and depression then?
To some degree, yes.
Okay. So clearly, these things can exist, but as our understanding of this thing grows, then it will become more and more prevalent. No?
I know. I totally agree with that. But is that a good thing? Is that something that we like? Like the more,
Yes,
the
it's
more.
a good thing that, for example, we recognize what anxiety and depression is so people can get treatment. Yeah.
But so you agree that when we focus on something and shove things down people's throats, uh,
Not
that
shoving it down anybody's throats, but go ahead.
no, like throwing it in people's faces all the time, with anxiety, depression, the trends, like people. So you admit that it does create more people with those issues.
It doesn't create people with those issues. It brings attention to the fact that those people exist and have always existed. I looked this up for you in Wikipedia, and you
Okay.
can read about, this is an early account of gender dysphoria. Eleanor Reichener, a male-bodied Briton arrested in 1394 while living and doing sex work dressed as a woman, has been seen as a trans woman. In the Balkans, since the 1400s, female-assigned people have transitioned to live as men, called sworn virgins. In Japan, accounts of trans people go back to the Edo period. In Indonesia, there are millions of trans/third gender waria, and these other societies recognize 5 genders. In Oceania, trans/third gender roles. Let's see, colonial America, 1600s. Yeah, so I mean, you can read about this. There have been trans people documented throughout history.
Do you think that these were prevalent?
It doesn't have to be prevalent for my... Wait. The question isn't, was it prevalent? The question is, have trans people always existed? And to the answer to the question,
okay, well,
yes,
I would agree with you. In every society, there has been probably a few examples of people that would fall into this category. I would agree with you that there's a few people, but if we in this society didn't put so much focus onto trans people and to there would be much less of them, and I think that's an undeniable fact that there would be less trans people if we weren't talking about them
because
all the time
society
and
wouldn't
pushing it down
of
the
course
throats of
because
children.
Society wouldn't be making it more and more known that we're trying to move towards a progressive direction. Yeah, just like there were. Wait, hold on. Do you think that like more people? Wait, stop. Do you think that like more people have become gay since the 2000s compared to the 50s?
Yes.
So you think more people have been socialized into being gay?
Yes.
Okay, then it sounds like you're just kind of a dipshit then, because you know there's a genetic reason for being gay.
There's a genetic... okay, I'm sure that's part of it. It is certainly not all of it. That is certainly...
It doesn't have to be all of it. It's the fact that gay people are predisposed to being gay, both genetically and because of hormone washing that occurs in the womb, and so they're not being gay through any choice of their own. So how come the rates of gay people have increased now as opposed to the 50s? Are more people just becoming gay? Or is it more rather that we are now recognizing more gay people?
I think it is absolutely that because, I think it's both. Obviously there's a genetic factor when it comes to gay people, but I think that it is absolutely true that you can also be convinced of something.
And, you cannot be convinced of being gay to any long-term...
Your environment.
No, you
your
cannot
environment can absolutely change the way that you view sexual things. Yes.
No, you cannot be socialized or convinced into being gay, especially not for any long-term type thing. And if that were the case, we would see... Hold on, stop. Because, I'm telling you, because if that were the case, then because if that were the case, we would see conversion therapy working.
Or maybe... I don't think that that's true either. And maybe conversion therapy has worked for some people. I don't know. I'm not at all educated on conversion therapy. But
what are you talking about? Conversion therapy is condemned in virtually every developed country. It's been seen as not ineffective and incredibly cruel. And so we've stopped doing it. If there were people who've been socialized into being gay, then we would see a higher rate of efficacy in regards to conversion therapy. But we don't see that.
But the thing is that we first of all, I don't think conversion therapy is necessary, and I think it's a cruel thing to do to somebody. I don't think that it's necessary to happen. I don't agree with it, but also, it's not the entire society. Like the entire society is pro-gay at this point. So if you go to like a conversion therapy,
it's like a little over 50%.
It is way over 50%. I think it's like 80% support gay marriage. I think that's the what I saw.
I think
80%.
that you're comparing the rates of Republicans compared to Democrats. Generally speaking, the acceptance of gay people is right around like I think 55% acceptance, but there's still a massive chunk that is not accepting.
I do not think that's true. I think it's much higher than that.
Okay, continue. Go ahead and make your point. I'll look it up.
But either way, I think that there is a societal reason as to why there are way more gay people now than there used to be. Yes, you couldn't come out as gay before, but there's no way, like in my generation, for example, there's like I think it was like 40% somewhere I saw that it was like that identify as LGBTQ. There is no way that as a species that wants to stay alive and doesn't want to die out, that 40% that we would evolve to 40% of our people in our species not being able to reproduce. There is no way, no evolutionary reason as to why that would ever happen.
There are actual evolutionary reasons as to why people are gay.
Why?
Because it strengthens the relations between packs usually. This is why chimps, for example, will engage in sex homosexual sex because that is a more productive method than, say, fighting. It actually does benefit the survival of the species.
Homosexual behavior, sure, okay, but the people that are actually gay and don't want anything to do with women and don't want to reproduce, these chimps may be doing sexual things with other men, but they are also reproducing with women.
Not necessarily. You don't know that.
Almost. Well,
there are examples of gay animals if you want to look at it. Like, yeah, there are a lot of animals, you're right, that exhibit homosexual behavior. But again, I don't know what this weird obsession with reproduction is. There are a lot of straight people. Well, wait, there's a lot of straight people that don't reproduce either.
Well, I know, but I'm saying from an evolutionary perspective. So the reason
there's an evolutionary reason why people are gay.
There's not, though.
I just told you why, dude.
No, but being completely gay is not going to help the species. It's just not.
Yes, it is.
It's not going to help it prosper. No,
that's a lie. That's not even true.
That is not a lie. That is not the entire point. The what drives every single person, or most people at least, is the biological drive to reproduce. That is why the majority of people are attracted to other women. Or men are attracted to women, women are attracted to men. That is why the majority is
you're forgetting one that gay people can also adopt. Also, here you go.
But I'm talking about evolution. I'm talking about evolution.
Yes. For humans and many other animals, sex is not just about reproduction. In our closest primate relative, the bonobo, straight and gay sex have vital roles in play, social transactions, barter of food, same-sex social bonding, and bonding between mating pairs.
I'm not denying that happens, but I'm just saying that
early
the
humans
majority
that
of
could
these
quickly
people
and easily access the benefits of group living had a strong selective advantage. We believe this led to the evolution of a whole range of traits, including reduced aggression, increased communication, understanding social play, and affiliation.
Okay, again, I'm not saying that participating in homosexual behavior doesn't have its evolutionary benefit, but being completely gay and not wanting to reproduce is not beneficial to the species overall. It's
That's
just
not true.
It is true.
It benefits the species because we also, at least if we're going to talk about humans, there are kids that need parents.
Yes.
Yes. And having those children raised by parents. I'm talking about from an
evolutionary perspective. I'm talking about an evolutionary perspective. I'm not talking about modern society. I'm talking about, your brain is still wired to be out in the wild. I mean, your brain hasn't changed much in 100,000 years. It just hasn't.
Okay, hold on. In a paper published yesterday, we propose human sexuality, including homosexuality, evolved as an outcome of the evolution of increased sociability in humans. We argue many of the evolutionary forces that shaped human sexuality were social rather than based on reproductive ability. This is our sociosexual hypothesis for the evolution of gay sex and attraction.
So that's a theory.
We believe something similar happened in recent human evolution. Gay sex and attraction may have evolved because individuals with a degree of same-sex attraction benefited from greater social mobility, integration, and stronger same-sex social bonds. This may sound counterintuitive given gay people are socially marginalized. However, our argument addresses the early evolution of human sexuality, not how relatively recent phenomena like religion and religion-based legal structures have responded to sexual minorities. And there are supporting facts given as well here.
So do you genuinely believe that 40% of the population has always been gay, bisexual, or trans?
I don't know where you're getting it. Where's the 40% of the population is gay?
Well, okay, so 40% of my generation identifies as LGBTQ. So do you believe that many people have always existed?
Well, no, because it would fully depend on what they're identifying as. So if they're identifying as non-binary, say, solely because they want to, then no. Of course, that probably has gone up. However, the rate of people that are suffering from gender dysphoria, that have that incongruence between their body and their gender identity, yes, those people have always existed.
Why do you think that's happening?
Huh?
Why do you think that is becoming such a common thing when it has not been common really ever in history?
Why is what
and now
specifically,
it's
like gender
common.
dysphoria?
Gender dysphoria. When gender,
again, I think
in my
it's
opinion,
because
is not
we
even
are
really
now recognizing it, so we have better documentation and better understanding of these conditions. Like I said, people with gender dysphoria, trans people, have existed throughout history. This is documented.
Again, but nowhere near to the rate that we have them now. It's just not. And in the
You
next
realize
20
there
years,
is a
we're probably
degree
going
of
to have.
choice for some of that, sure.
Yeah,
But when I'm
and
talking about people that actually have gender dysphoria, then yeah, no. Honestly, we have better understanding. We have better language to even describe what these people are feeling like. We have advances in medicine. We have advances in our understanding of human psychology.
I think that we are just creating more confused people that are going to have to deal with this mental problem that they otherwise wouldn't have had to deal with, and we're creating a
No,
much
you're
more
just
harmful
deluding
society.
yourself right now.
How?
Because if we decided to just ignore this, then what you'd have are people who are still suffering from these conditions, but then unable to get help. You'd actually see the
So
suicide rate go higher.
I maybe now that we've gone as far as we have, but before say 50 years ago or whatever, if we didn't spend as much time talking about these people and bringing up this kind of lifestyle, or not lifestyle, but you know what I'm trying to say. Um,
Mm-hmm.
then I do not think that there would be as many as there are now, and I think that would be a great thing, because these people are severely mentally ill. They're very unhappy.
They're mentally
Um,
ill largely because of people that make your type of arguments. I mean,
I would totally
let's be
disagree with that.
honest, dude.
I would
When
totally
you're over
disagree
here
with that.
saying that it's not natural or that it'd be better if there were
It's not.
less people like that,
Well,
then
because they're very unhappy. I don't want
they're
a
unhappy
society of
because of
unhappy
people
people.
like you. You
I
can't
totally
no,
disagree.
stop. You're literally creating the problem and then appealing to the problem to say
I
that
do
they're the
not
problem.
agree. I do not agree. I think that no matter what, and again, if the only way that you can actually switch your sex or whatever is through modern medicine and modern technology, what would have someone done 400 years ago if they had this problem? What would they have done?
I don't know.
So if you have a mental problem that it can only be solved through modern medicine and modern technology, that is something that
They
should
would
make you
probably
stop and
dress a
think.
certain way. They would probably express themselves
Sure,
differently.
dress however the fuck you want. That's fine. Dress however the fuck you want. If you're a woman and you want to wear fucking, or if you're a man and you want to wear a dress, by all fucking means. It doesn't mean that you're a woman all of a sudden. It just means
You're
you
right.
want
It's
to
not
dress
wearing the
things.
dress that makes you the woman. It's the
So what
internal
makes you the woman?
perception of yourself that holds the weight.
But again, okay. So what makes a woman though?
A
So
woman is
what is
someone
the
whose
internal
internal
perception?
perception aligns
The
with what we
internal perception of
culturally
what?
view as being feminine.
Cultural. Okay, so why can't people just do the things that are culturally seen as women, but not put a label on it, not make themselves, into this, change their sex or change their
In an
gender? They
ideal
could just.
society where gender just didn't exist, that probably would be the best option. However, right now, gender is a real thing. It might be a social construct, but it is a social construct that informs your internal perception of yourself.
But again, I don't understand why there has to be labels on it rather than just acting the way you want to act. I mean, no one's gonna stop you from
This is an
acting any way you
overall
want
like
to act at this point.
societal thing you have a problem with. This is like you have a problem with the way we categorize things, which is a much
Yes,
larger conversation to have. Right now, gender is real. The
I
external
don't I
view
don't
of
agree.
gender informs how people perceive themselves, and their internal perception informs their gender
I I,
identity.
th- I think it's overcomplicated. I think that there's no reason to um have any of these labels, first of all, and second of all, again, like this is, I don't believe in any of this shit. It just doesn't. It makes no sense. It makes no sense at all.
Well, just if you don't understand it doesn't mean it doesn't make sense.
Well, but okay, but
Because like
so
you're like kind of going all over the place. Like first you said it's not natural and there's no evolutionary reason. I just gave you
yes,
an explanation that shows that there actually is pretty good evidence that
I
there
think that's
was
decently
actually
good,
an
but
evolutionary reason. Second of all, whether or not something is natural is actually irrelevant as to whether or not it's good or bad for humans to
I
do.
would disagree. I would disagree with that too.
Really? So you think if there's something that is natural, what do you
So
mean exactly? Do you
so
think that if it's natural it
so
determines if it's moral?
no, no, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying if so not everything that's natural is good. I agree with you on that. I don't
And
think that
not everything
everything
that's
that's natural is
unnatural
good.
is bad.
I think that almost everything unnatural has some sort of negative side effect to it. I can't think of anything unnatural that doesn't have some sort of negative.
Using a toilet?
Um. All right. Well, there you go. There's one example, I guess.
There's Dude, there's so many things we do that are unnatural. I mean, driving a car, I guess you could argue that cars have a negative impact on the
there's lots of
environment.
lots of negative side effects of cars. The energy that
But
goes
it's
into
benefited
manufacturing the
humans.
cars, the fact that it pollutes the planet, the fact that it contributes
What
to
about wearing
climate change, the fact that
glasses?
it wearing glasses.
That's not natural at all, but that does nothing but benefit people.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
So appealing
I
to
would say
whether or
the
not it's
majority.
natural is really irrelevant here.
I would agree that there are a few things, few natural things that are that don't really have any negative side effects to them. But I would say the majority of unnatural things do. Like say fucking cell phones, computers,
What
almost
about
all of the
having
things.
okay, so what about if trans people or gay people are unnatural according to you, which isn't even true, but if I were to just grant that,
I'm not saying
then
gay people are
how
completely unnatural.
well
I'm just
how
saying the
then
amount
what's the harm
is
here?
unnatural.
They're benefiting society. They're more likely to adopt. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, but the problem is again with gay people. If gay people want to, I don't really give a fuck about gay people. I'm talking more about trans people because they're the ones that suffer from disproportionate mental
Suicidality.
illness.
I mean, gay people suffer from a disproportionate rate of
But
drug
that is
use,
true.
homelessness. It's usually
That
the
is
LGBT community as an entire umbrella that I talk about.
that is true. But trans people are much much higher than gay people are
Sure.
in mental illness and the suicide rate especially.
Sure. Okay.
But
I
I
just
mean,
don't.
I
This
just
isn't an argument that being trans is bad. Then.
I'm not saying I have nothing against trans people themselves. I have no problem with trans people themselves. I'm saying that the way that we treat them in society is completely wrong. Rather than trying to so say if you go to a therapist as a trans person and you say oh I'm feeling like a man and I'm a woman. I don't think the response from the therapist should be like, oh well you are a man and you are obviously it's going to take a bit more time than that, but I
Yeah.
mean just as an example. A therapist saying, "Oh, well, you actually are a man, and let me confuse you even more." I think that is a huge problem. Rather than it would be like if someone came in
Yeah. If that was what was
with
happening, it would probably be a problem. But that's just not what's happening. If they're
well,
coming in there,
again,
there
I
would be a
oversimplified it.
diagnosis
I
involved. Well,
oversimplified
hold
it.
on. There'd
Yes,
be a diagnosis involved as to determine whether or not they have gender
right,
dysphoria.
but okay, deal with from experience in with therapy and with that they diagnose you very fast. It is a very quick process. You don't need to there I mean I've been diagnosed with fucking everything, even like no, not everything, but like I've been diagnosed very
Well, that
quickly.
makes sense.
No. I mean, like I've been diagnosed with like depression and anxiety and OCD and all these different things. I don't think that I have those things, but the diagnosis is so easy
Well, what you're saying
that
now is just that like you haven't gone through any medical school, but you just think you know better than them. And like I can't help you
how am I
there.
saying that?
That
How am
level
I
of
saying that?
fucking arrogance I can't deal with. Like I've been diagnosed with ADHD, OCD,
Hmm.
depression, and anxiety, and I definitely
Hmm.
have those things.
Hmm.
So I
Well,
mean,
I'm not saying it's always wrong, but I'm saying that sometimes I think that they go far too quickly. Yes, and I
so
think
then
that's a
wouldn't that
problem in
okay?
the
So that would
medical
be a problem with
industry
the
by
therapist
itself.
and okay. So that's a problem with the medical industry. Why
Yes.
aren't you talking about that rather than talking about the problem with trans people?
Well, because I'm saying with trans people they get diagnosed, very fast. I'm saying it's
If
very
that
easy
were
to be
true,
diagnosed with
then
that.
that would be a problem with the medical procedures. That's not a
Right.
problem with trans people.
I don't. Like I said before, I don't have a problem with trans people. I have a
You're
problem with
saying
the way
it's
that
not
society
natural. You're
treats
saying
trans
we should
people.
be discouraging it. Yes, you obviously have some kind of a problem with it.
I have a problem with the way that society treats it. Like I said, I don't have a problem with the individual. I have a problem with the way that society deals with it. So it would be like if I was schizophrenic and saying, "Oh, well, I see a shadow person in the room that I'm talking to," and the entire society was like, "Yeah, I see him too. Yeah,
Do
I
you
know.
know?
You're right."
Wait, do you think there was no difference? Do you think that that's actually analogous?
I think there's some difference, but I think
Do
that
you think that there's a
it's a
difference
decent
between if we were
analogy.
to validate a schizophrenic's delusion that would lead to more harm for that individual, whereas
Why? Why
validating
you're validating them? You're
because it's not
validating their
just hold on,
experience.
wait, stop. It's not just validating somebody because of any reason. It's that when you validate a schizophrenic person, they are having legitimate delusions about a shadow
Right.
person in the room.
Right.
And validating that leads to negative outcomes for that individual. When you're talking about a trans person, you're talking about an internal perception of themselves, an identity, which by validating, you are bettering their well-being and their mental health.
Well,
These are not
okay,
only
so
hold on, stop. These are not only completely disanalogous, these are like polar opposites.
I totally disagree. I think that you know, the schizophrenics, it would probably make them feel better if everyone accepted their version of reality. They would
No.
probably feel better. Well,
No,
why not?
it
Why not?
wouldn't, because
Why
that
not?
negatively impacts them in the long term. It doesn't
I
negatively
think it.
impact trans
I
people
think
to
it
validate their
negatively
gender identity.
I think it negatively impacts trans people as well for them to get non-reversible surgeries done on themselves. And if they don't like it, then fuck you. That's
They're an
basically
adult. They
what.
can make those decisions for themselves.
Yeah. Well, okay. So if I went into a doctor's office and I said, I've always felt like I had one leg, and so can you cut off my other one? They would send me to a psych ward.
Oh
So
my
why is it
God.
different?
I think that you're
Why is it
actually
different?
just dumb.
Why is it
I
different?
think
though?
you're just dumb, actually.
Why is it different?
Because cutting
How
off
is that
your leg
different?
does a harm to you.
Cutting off your
Validating
breasts
someone's
as a
gender
woman-
identity does.
cutting off your breasts as a woman also causes harm to
No,
you.
it doesn't. Their
Yes,
mental
it
health.
does.
No, it doesn't. Because if they have
Yes,
a.
it does.
No, it doesn't. Because if they are identifying
does.
differently and their internal
Well,
perception
I
of
identify
themselves.
as having
Stop.
one leg.
Stop. Their internal perception of themselves is in line with being trans or having gender dysphoria, then no, all the empiricism we have available shows that gender reassignment surgery, or sex reassignment surgery, betters their well-being. Cutting off your leg does not better your mental well-being.
I have not seen anything. The suicide rate stays quite similar
Shut
after
the
the
fuck
surgeries
up.
are done.
Shut
It's
the fuck
true.
up.
It's true.
Shut up.
It's true.
No,
It's true.
it's not
It
true.
is
You
true.
don't know what
It
you're
is true.
talking about.
I do.
Okay, what study said that, please?
I mean, I don't have the fucking. I've seen it before. I don't.
Yeah,
have
was it the one
study
from
in front of me.
Sweden?
I don't know where.
There's
it was
only
from.
one study that shows that, and it's been discredited, and it's been literally debunked from the fucking author of the study.
I don't know which one I saw. I know
You don't
that
know
I
what
saw
you're talking about.
okay, I'm not super educated on.
You're not educated on this at all. You're
I
like
would
way
disagree
too
with you.
confident over here. It's like Dunning-Kruger.
I would disagree with you.
Well, of course you would. But no, we have plenty of evidence to show that gender reassignment surgery does, in fact, better their mental well-being. I will pull this systematic review up for you if you are interested. Let's see. Let's see. Hold on. Oh. Hold on a second. Sorry. Reassignment. Here we go. I can send this to you if you like. It's from... Oh, you know what? This is not the right one, actually. This is... Here we go. This is from Cornell.
Okay.
This search found a robust international consensus in the peer-reviewed literature that gender transition, including medical treatment such as hormone therapy and surgeries, improves the overall well-being of transgender individuals. The literature also indicates the greater availability of medical and social support for gender transition contributes to better quality of life for those who identify as transgender.
By what metric is better quality
is
of
a
life?
systematic literature review of all peer-reviewed articles published in English between 1991 and June 2017.
Is there any more information on? I mean, that's so vague.
Well, you can scroll
How
through
can
like
you
the
even measure
individual
that?
studies. You can scroll
How can
through.
you even measure that? Quality of life increases. How can you even measure that?
Well, you'd probably do like an assessment with them and find out if they are indicating that they're doing better in life. I mean, that's the way you would assess that for anything. How do you know whether or not the depression medication is working, right? You do an assessment of that person.
Well, I mean, wasn't there something that just came out about depression medication that it doesn't even work?
No, there's something that came out that suggested that serotonin might not actually be the sole reason behind depression.
Right.
Not that it said depression medication didn't work.
Well, but if serotonin isn't the problem and depression is
I'm
caused,
not getting off onto a different subject right now. I don't
is-
care about this depression medication right now. I'm talking to you right now. You said there's no evidence of this or you haven't seen any. Well, now you've seen
I have not
evidence of
seen
it.
any.
I just gave you evidence. So now you have seen
Again,
evidence.
I know this is but I don't immediately. I mean, I will have to look into it.
I sent it to
obviously,
you.
But okay.
Check it out. Because the only study you're talking about that said that it got worse was the Swedish study, which didn't actually say that. It's been misinterpreted by a bunch of dipshits. You there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just looking at it. I don't know. Even if I am wrong about that in particular, which I don't, I'm not just going to,
No, I understand. You're
but
not going to just admit to it. I know, but like look over it.
but
But the thing is
even
this
even if
what this does is it BTFOs your argument that if I went and wanted my leg cut off or some shit,
Mhm,
because validating someone's delusion if they're schizophrenic or cutting somebody's
mhm.
leg off because they're delusional and want their leg cut off doesn't benefit them in any meaningful way.
But um my point was though is that even with that, even if that is true, and people do feel better after those those procedures, making more people have to go through those procedures by making it such a huge thing in society, I still think is
You're
negative.
not making more people go through those procedures. That's where you keep getting hung up
But
on
you are
this.
though.
No, you're
You are. If
not.
you're creating more trans people,
You're
then
not
that is
creating more trans
absolutely.
people.
But you are
You're
though.
making a society in which it's more acceptable to be trans so people can actually live their lives freely in America, the fucking land of the free. Yeah. Let me ask you
And
this. Why don't you look up the statistics for left hand people? People who use their left hand to write. You know, back in the olden days, it was seen as being demonic to use your left
that's
hand.
dumb.
So it
That's
was
dumb.
discouraged. But guess what? Now it's more acceptable. You can see a massive uptick of people using their left hand to write. Have we
So
just created a bunch of left-handed people? No, we now have people who have always been this way. It's now acceptable to be this way.
well, it's still like a very small minority of people though that
And it's
write with
gone
their
up
left hand.
significantly.
I don't know anything about that. I mean, I've
Okay, well
never
that
heard that
is
before.
the case. It's happened. You can look it up yourself if you don't believe me.
But either way, with the idea that gender is real, and that even if all of that is true, getting especially children on hormones makes no sense because um
You shouldn't be putting kids on hormones. Yeah, you should be, if they have gender
okay.
dysphoria and it's documented that they have that, and you can
Okay.
demonstrate that, then they should be going on puberty blockers, which are not
Puberty.
hormones.
That is okay. Have you seen the fact that their sexual function is fucked up if kids go on hormones or not hormones, puberty blockers when they're young children or not or even 9, 10, 11?
Wait, could you say that again?
Have you seen the thing that their sexual function as adults are fucked up when they take puberty blockers as children?
Uh, I mean, yeah, it's going to be probably diminished significantly while
Right.
you're on the medication. Yeah, because it's the opposite of hormones. It's putting a pause on hormones.
But okay, so you think that you can just pause puberty and then start it up again later on in life? Does that make
No, I
sense?
don't think that. Medical professionals do.
Does that make sense? You can
Yes.
just pause. You could just so what if I was on puberty blockers until I'm 45? I could just start puberty at 45 years old.
Well, no, probably not. But you're not going on
Why?
because you're not going on puberty blockers till you're fucking 40 years old. You would be on puberty
So
blockers
so
during the
what
time in
so
which your body begins going through puberty.
so how long could I be on puberty blockers and delay it for?
I don't know, and I don't need to know that answer in order for your argument to still not make any sense. You're not
And I
able to
think you
say,
have.
"Hey, yeah, the medical research seems to support this conclusion, but it just doesn't add up to me." Like I don't care.
Well,
Yes, you can put a pause on puberty.
I do not even if I think you also have too much faith in the like the medical community itself.
Yeah,
I
here we
think you
go.
have I think you have way too much
Here we go.
like faith in their credibility
Here we go
because I
again.
don't what
This is just the massive cope that you people always run to, is when you
it's
suddenly
true though.
realize that every bit of empiricism is against you, rather than just acknowledging that maybe you're wrong and don't actually know better than every well-reputable medical institution in the entire fucking planet. You
Well,
instead say, oh, well, you know what? I bet that they're just wrong somehow.
here's
Because somehow, I don't know,
here's
you were
what
just born knowing the right answer? Like, I don't even
here's what
know.
I know. Here's what I know is that studies constantly get messed with constantly by the pharmaceutical industries, the food industry, I mean all the sugar industry especially as well. Studies are constantly fucked with. So that they
So
can get
why do
the
they all say
answer.
the same thing then? You think that they're just being fucked with?
I mean I don't know. It makes no
Do you
logical
think
sense to
every
me
study from
that
every different
putting people
institution?
putting people on or cutting body parts off of people and putting in fake body parts into them, so they're this mutilated like thing. I can't imagine, no matter what a study says, that is going to be good for anybody.
I find it funny that you're like, I have nothing against trans people, and then I say, well, actually, it's kind of your attitude that seems to be negatively impacting the suicide rate. You're like, nuh-uh, and then you're like, yeah, but they're being turned into this fucking mutilated thing.
What else do you call that, though? What else
Somebody
do you call cutting off body parts
and
then putting plastic into your body?
Why do you not talk this way about like Kim Kardashian, who's had like?
I do.
Oh, so she's mutilated herself?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
She has.
All right, that's fine. Like, I mean, if you want to just go with the most hyperbolic language imaginable, that's fine. But I guess you can keep acting like an emotional snowflake. But at the end of the day, the science is on my side, dude. Puberty blockers have been studied since the 70s. Kids with precocious puberty have been being put on puberty blockers.
Well, that's a real problem, though.
So is gender dysphoria.
That's like a physical problem, though.
So do you think gender dysphoria just isn't a real thing either?
I do think it's a real thing. I think it's something that society has created, but it is something that people actually have to go through. Yes.
So society has created it, whether or not society has created it, which that's not true. But even if I were to grant that, it doesn't mean that that doesn't demand treatment all the same.
I don't think the treatment should be causing an irreversible.
That's not what the treatment is.
I mean, it kind of is, especially when you go on hormones. Especially okay, so a man with low testosterone, just naturally low testosterone, they're much more likely to deal with a lot of different mental disorders. So if you, as a biological
dysphoria.
But if you are a biological man and you downregulate your testosterone and increase your estrogen levels, as a biological man, no matter what your gender identity is, that is going to fuck with your brain, because your brain is a male brain.
No,
your body is a male body. Yes,
wrong.
It is.
Actually, if somebody's a trans person who has gender dysphoria, there's more evidence to show that their brain actually has different estrogen receptors, to show that there's actually a brain reason behind why they are trans, not the other way around, dude. You just don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Just say that trans people make your tummy hurt and then be done with it. Don't like hide behind this phony society or mutilating their bodies, bruh. Just recognize that trans people make you uncomfortable, and that's where all of your argumentation is stemming from.
That's not though.
Okay.
I feel bad for the people that have to deal with the way that society's treating these
I feel
things.
bad for people that have to deal with you and your fucking ignorance.
There's no one that has to deal with me.
I have to deal with you right now. I'm feeling sorry for myself.
You have to deal with me, sure. But I mean, you don't really have to. But I mean, I'm not the one making any kind of policy.
Neither am I, but okay.
Well, I'm not saying you are. I'm saying that the way that it's being handled right now, the people that are handling it do have that power. And I think that the way that they are dealing with it is going to cause a much bigger problem in the future than what people could think of.
Well, what you have right now is a slippery slope fallacy that you're clinging on to. What if stuff gets bad? We already have evidence to show that if someone has gender dysphoria and then they go through a puberty that further exacerbates their gender dysphoria, they're much more likely to commit suicide later on in life. We know that. I don't need to hang on to a slippery...
You cut out. I couldn't hear you.
Oh, I said that if somebody has gender dysphoria in their youth and then they begin going through the wrong puberty, that is going to exacerbate their gender dysphoria to the point of making it even more likely that they would commit suicide later on in their life. That's not a slippery slope. I have the actual evidence that that's the case. You have this feeling that, well, what if by allowing this later on, everybody just turns into mutilated zombies? Oh, I'm scared. You don't have any fucking evidence for your claim. I have medical consensus on my side.
You know what? I actually agree with you. I should have been more prepared for this.
Well,
totally
get more prepared and come back.
I would, but I don't think that it is as I still completely agree with what I've said from the start. Just from again, this is not good when it comes to a debate, but from what I see is common sense, or from my own logic.
Do you think that common sense would suggest the world is flat?
No.
Really?
No, I mean, depends on I mean, you can, if you go into like a plane or whatever, you can see like the curvature of the Earth.
Okay, but
Or,
common
like
sense, like in your day-to-day life,
day to day.
pretty
Okay,
strongly
sure,
indicates that the
sure.
world is flat. Yeah, so
Okay.
okay, so appealing to common sense is really fucking useless.
But that's just one example of like trying to see something that, is so huge that there's no. I try to think of a different example of that. Like, you know, that's a very specific example because
Yeah,
the
because
Earth
it
is so big you
demonstrates
can't see it.
quickly that common sense doesn't get you very far. I mean, so
Well,
far you've been wrong about
in
everything.
some,
Like,
I don't think so.
your common sense has gotten you nowhere. It's led you down the wrong path.
I would disagree.
Okay. Well, is there anything else you want to say?
Not that I can think of.
All right. Well, go do a little bit more research or some prep or whatever, and then let's have another debate. All right.
All right.
All right. So the whole problem with common sense is just that it's common sense, and common sense is going to vary from person to person.